The rain fell in sheets against the cracked windows of the apartment, each drop a tiny hammer blow that echoed the pounding of Amara's heart. She stood in the doorway of her father's room, peeping through the slightly open door, watching as two men in sharp black suits spoke in low, menacing tones. Her father, Marcus Hayes, sat slumped in his chair, his face a map of defeat and shame. "Mr. Hayes," the taller of the two men said, his accent crisp and precise, "you have exhausted Mr. Kim's patience. $200,000 does not simply disappear." Amara's breath caught. 200,000? She'd known her father had gambling problems, had watched him spiral after her mother's death 3 years ago, but this was beyond anything she'd imagined. "I need more time," her father pleaded, his voice cracking. "Just another month. I'm working 2 jobs, I can." "You've had 6 months. The second man's voice was cold. "Mr. Kim requires payment. Tonight." "I don't have it." Marcus's voice broke into a sob. "I don't have anything. The house is already mortgaged twice over. I have nothing left to give." "That's not entirely true." The first man's eyes drifted to Amara, standing frozen in the doorway. A slow, calculating smile spread across his face. In 2 long strides, he reached the door and pulled it open, making her gasp in shock. "You have more than enough." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as both men turned to look at her. Amara was 22, working double shifts at a diner to help with bills while taking night classes, her cornrows pulled back in a practical style that kept her hair out of her face during long work hours. She'd never thought of herself as particularly beautiful. Her body was curved from her mother's genetics and southern cooking, her dark skin marked with a few acne scars from her teenage years, but the way these men looked at her made her feel like a piece of meat being appraised at market. "No," her father whispered, eyes darting from Amara to the men. "No, please, not her. Take me instead. Kill me. Do whatever you want, but leave my daughter alone." The tall man ignored him. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, and held it up. The reply came within seconds. He read it, smiled, and pocketed the device. "Mr. Kim will see you both. Tomorrow night. Bring the girl." He handed Marcus a card with an address embossed in silver. "Don't run. You know what happens to people who run from Mr. Kim." After they left, Amara and her father sat in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice hollowed out by despair. "I'm so sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault." Amara stayed silent, staring at him in confusion. She still didn't understand what was going on, or why life was so unfair that she had to be pulled into her father's mess. But looking at him, this broken man who had once carried her on his shoulders and called her his princess, she could only feel a deep, aching sadness. "What's going to happen to me?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," he whispered. "I don't know." But they both knew. They'd both heard the stories about the Kim family, about their empire of nightclubs, gambling dens, and darker enterprises that people only whispered about. They both knew that debts to the Kim family were paid, one way or another. That night, Amara lay awake in her small bedroom, staring at the ceiling with its water stains that looked like continents on a map. She thought about running, about disappearing into the night and never looking back. But where would she go? And what would they do to her father if she ran? She thought about her mother, about the strength Keisha Hayes had shown even as cancer ate away at her body. "You're tougher than you know, baby," she told Amara near the end. "You've got steel in your spine. Don't ever let anyone make you forget that." Amara closed her eyes and tried to find that steel. She would need it. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. We post new stories every week, so don't miss out on new updates. The Kim family compound was in the hills outside the city, hidden behind high walls and elaborate gates. The main house was a stunning fusion of traditional Korean architecture and modern luxury, curved rooflines with elaborate brackets, floor-to-ceiling windows that glowed with warm light, and manicured gardens that whispered of wealth and power. Amara and her father were escorted through the main hall by silent guards, their footsteps echoing on marble floors. The interior was decorated with expensive art, each piece carefully chosen and perfectly placed. It was beautiful and cold, like a museum dedicated to the worship of money. They were led into a large office where a man sat behind a desk of dark wood, speaking rapid Korean into a phone. He gestured for them to sit without looking up, his tone sharp and authoritative. Kim Jae was 28 years old, though he carried himself with the confidence of someone much older. When he finally ended his call and looked up, Amara felt her breath catch despite herself. He was beautiful in a way that seemed almost unfair, sharp jawline, high cheekbones, and dark eyes that seemed to see straight through to her bones. His black hair was styled perfectly, and he wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her father's car. But it was his expression that truly struck her, cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of mercy. "Mr. Hayes," he said, his English flawless but tinged with an accent that made each word sound precise and dangerous. "You owe me $200,000. You have wasted 6 months of my time. Explain why I shouldn't kill you right now." "Please," Marcus began, but Jae-hyun raised a hand, silencing him. "I wasn't asking for begging. I was asking for a solution." His eyes moved to Amara, studying her with the same detached interest one might show a painting being considered for purchase. "Stand up," he commanded her. Amara's legs trembled as she stood, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze with as much defiance as she could muster. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her cower. Something flickered in his eyes, but it was gone too quickly to read. "Turn around." "No," Amara said, her voice steadier than she felt. The room went deathly quiet. Even her father seemed to stop breathing. No one, apparently, said no to Kim Jae-hyun. He stood slowly, walked around his desk, and stopped directly in front of her. He was tall, and she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. This close, she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy, and see the faint scar that cut through his left eyebrow. "No?" he repeated, his voice soft and more dangerous for its quietness. "I'm not livestock," Amara said. "Whatever you're going to do to me, you can do it without treating me like an animal first." For a long moment, they stood in silence, engaged in a silent battle of wills. Then, incredibly, the corner of his mouth twitched upward in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Interesting," he murmured. He returned to his desk, pressed a button on his phone, and spoke in Korean. A woman entered, elegant, middle-aged, with kind eyes that seemed out of place in this cold house. Jae-hyun spoke to Amara again. "Your father's debt will be transferred to you. You will remain here in my household until the debt is repaid through your service. Mrs. Park will show you to your quarters and explain your duties." "Wait," Marcus lurched forward, reaching for his daughter. "Please, take me instead. Make me work. I'll do anything. Just don't." "You had your chance to do anything, Mr. Hayes. You gambled it away, literally." Jae-hyun's voice was final. "Your daughter is young and healthy. She can work. You are aging and unreliable. This is not a negotiation. This is the consequence of your choices." 2 guards moved to escort Marcus out. Amara watched her father being led away, saw him crying, heard him calling her name. She wanted to cry too, wanted to scream and fight and run. But she stood still, that steel spine her mother had spoken of holding her upright. "Amara," Jae-hyun said, and the sound of her name in his voice sent a strange shiver through her. "Do not make the mistake of thinking you can run or fight your way out of this situation. You are mine now, in every way that matters. The sooner you accept that, the easier your life will be." She said nothing, just stared at him with all the hatred she could summon. He smiled, a real smile this time, cold and sharp as a knife's edge. "Yes," he said softly. "You'll do nicely." Do you think Amara is right for standing her ground and defying the Mafia king? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Amara's room was beautiful, which somehow made everything worse. The bed was enormous, covered in silk sheets that probably cost more than a month's rent. The attached bathroom had a deep soaking tub and a shower with multiple heads. French doors opened onto a private terrace that overlooked the gardens. It was a prison cell designed by someone with exquisite taste and unlimited money. Mrs. Park explained the rules with gentle firmness. Amara would attend to Jae-hyun's personal needs. She would be available whenever he summoned her. She would dress appropriately. Mrs. Park gestured to the closet, now filled with clothes Amara had never chosen, designer labels she'd only seen in magazines. She would not attempt to leave the compound. She would not contact her father or anyone else from her old life. What kind of personal needs? Amara asked, though she already knew the answer. Mrs. Park's kind eyes filled with sympathy. "Whatever Mr. Kim requires." That first week was a study in humiliation and fear. Jae-hyun summoned her to his private quarters every night. Sometimes he wanted her to simply sit silently while he worked, a breathing decoration to prove his power and her powerlessness. Sometimes he would circle her like a predator, commenting on what he planned to do with her, watching her reactions with clinical interest. But he never touched her. It was psychological warfare, and Amara realized he was enjoying it, the anticipation, the fear in her eyes, the way she flinched when he moved too quickly. He was a cat playing with a mouse, drawing out the game because the hunt was half the pleasure. On the 8th night, something changed. Jae-hyun had been drinking, not drunk, but loose in a way she hadn't seen before. He sprawled on his sofa, tie loosened, regarding her with heavy-lidded eyes. "Tell me about yourself," he said. Amara, who had been standing by the window as instructed, turned to look at him in surprise. "What?" "You heard me. I've bought you, paid $200,000 for you. I should at least know what I've purchased." The casual cruelty of it made her stomach turn. "I'm not telling you anything." "Then I'll guess." He took another sip of whiskey. "You were going to school. Night classes, judging by your schedule. Community college, probably. Working at that diner to support your useless father. You have dreams of something better. Maybe you wanted to be a nurse? A teacher? Something respectable and safe." Each word was accurate, which made it worse. "How do you?" "I have a file on you 3 inches thick, Amara. I know everything about you, down to your shoe size and the fact that you donate blood every 2 months. I know your mother died of breast cancer. I know you haven't been in a serious relationship since your high school boyfriend. I know you volunteer at a youth center on Sunday mornings." He smiled coldly. "I even know that you have a small tattoo of a butterfly on your left hip that your father doesn't know about." Amara felt violated, exposed in a way that had nothing to do with physical nakedness. "Why?" she whispered. "If you know everything, why ask?" "Because knowing facts about someone is not the same as knowing them." He set down his glass and stood, walking toward her with the fluid grace of a dancer or a fighter. "I want to hear your voice when you talk about the things you care about. I want to see your face when you remember your mother. I want to understand what makes you who you are." "Why?" she asked again. "I'm just an object to you. You said so yourself." "Even objects have value," he replied. "And I always take care of my valuable things." He reached out slowly, giving her time to flinch away, which she did, and touched one of her cornrows, rubbing the textured braid between his fingers with curious interest. "Beautiful," he murmured. "I've never seen hair like this up close. How long does it take?" "Hours," she answered before she could stop herself. "Depending on the style." "Who did this for you?" "I did it myself. Couldn't afford a salon." He made a humming sound of acknowledgement, then dropped his hand. "You should sleep. Tomorrow I'm taking you somewhere." "Where?" "You'll see." He walked back to his desk, already dismissing her. "Mrs. Park will prepare you. Wear something comfortable." Amara left, her mind spinning with confusion. She'd been prepared for violence, for assault, for the brutal reality of what pleasure slave meant. But this strange interest, this careful probing of her personality, was something she hadn't anticipated and didn't know how to handle. The somewhere turned out to be a private shooting range. Amara stood in the concrete building, noise-canceling headphones on, watching as Hyun expertly loaded and fired a handgun at distant targets. Each shot was precise, controlled, the bullet striking exactly where he aimed. "Have you ever fired a gun?" he asked her during a break. "No." "Would you like to learn?" She wanted to say no out of pure spite, but curiosity won out. "Why would you teach me to shoot?" "Because knowledge is power, and I respect power, even in my enemies." He gestured to the lane. "Come." For the next hour, Hyun taught her the basics: how to hold the weapon, how to sight down the barrel, how to squeeze rather than pull the trigger. He stood behind her, his arms bracketing hers, his body warm against her back, guiding her movements with patient precision. It should have been terrifying or repulsive, but Amara found herself focusing on the mechanics of shooting instead, the satisfaction of watching her bullets inch closer to the center of the target with each attempt. "Good," Hyun said after she fired a respectable grouping. "You're a natural. You don't flinch. Why are you doing this?" Amara turned to face him, the gun safely pointed downward. "What's the game? Why not just—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Rape you," he supplied bluntly. She flinched at the word. "Because I'm not that kind of man, Amara. I'm many terrible things, a killer, a criminal, a man without mercy in business, but I'm not that." He took the gun from her hands, checking it with practiced ease. "When I take you to my bed, and I will, it will be because you choose to come. Because you want me." "That will never happen," she spat. He smiled. "We'll see." Over the following weeks, a strange routine developed. Hyun continued to summon her, but the summons became less about dominance and more about companionship. He would have her sit with him while he worked, occasionally asking her opinion on matters that seemed trivial: what color tie to wear, what wine to serve at an upcoming dinner. She realized he was lonely, this powerful man surrounded by subordinates and enemies, with no real equals and no one he could trust. One night, she found him on the terrace outside his office, staring out at the city lights with a glass of whiskey in hand. He looked younger like this, without the armor of his perfect suits and cold commands. "You should be sleeping," he said without turning around. "So should you." She surprised herself by stepping closer instead of leaving. "Don't you ever sleep? Sleep is for people without enemies." He took a sip. "In my world, letting your guard down for even a moment can get you killed." "Sounds exhausting." "It is." He finally looked at her, and in the moonlight, his face seemed softer, more human. "Do you know how I became the head of this organization?" "You inherited it from your father?" "I killed my father." He said it matter-of-factly, watching her reaction. "He was weak, making poor decisions that endangered everything we'd built. So I put a bullet in his head and took his place. I was 23 years old." Amara should have been horrified, should have run. Instead, she found herself asking, "Do you regret it?" "Every day," he admitted quietly. "And not at all. He would have destroyed us. I saved dozens of lives by taking one. But he was still my father, and sometimes I wake up and I can still see his face when he realized what I was going to do. He looked proud, in that last moment. Proud that I was strong enough to do what was necessary." They stood in silence for a while, the night air cool against Amara's skin. Finally, she spoke. "My mother told me something before she died. She said that people aren't just one thing. We're all contradictions, all capable of both terrible and beautiful acts. I think she was trying to prepare me for a complicated world." Amara looked at him. "You're a monster who teaches me to shoot and asks about my dreams. I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything with it," Jae-hyun replied. "Just exist. Just be here, be real. Everyone else in my life wants something from me or fears me too much to be genuine. You're the only person who looks at me with honest hatred instead of false respect. It's refreshing." "I don't hate you," Amara found herself admitting. "I want to. I should. But I don't." Something shifted between them in that moment, something dangerous and electric. Jae-hyun set down his glass and turned to face her fully. "Amara," he said softly. "Go to bed. Now. Before I do something we might regret." She went, her heart pounding, not entirely sure if she was relieved or disappointed. "Thanks for making it this far. Make sure you like and comment where you're listening from." The breaking point came during a dinner party. Jae-hyun was hosting important allies, and Amara had been dressed in an emerald gown that hugged her curves and made her skin glow. She was meant to stand beside him, silent and decorative, proof of his power and wealth. But one of the guests, a middle-aged man named Chin, had drunk too much. He kept looking at Amara with undisguised lust, making crude comments in Mandarin that he thought she couldn't understand. What he didn't know was that Amara had taken 3 semesters of Mandarin at community college. When he reached out to grab her inappropriately, Amara moved on instinct. She sidestepped, grabbed his extended arm, and used the basic self-defense move Jae-hyun had taught her during one of their training sessions, sending Chen stumbling into a table. The room went silent. Chen rose, furious, and raised his hand to strike her. He never completed the motion. Jae-hyun moved faster than Amara had ever seen, crossing the room in 3 strides, catching Chen's wrist in an iron grip. When he spoke, his voice was soft and deadly. "You dare touch what is mine?" The message was clear. Amara belonged to Jae-hyun, and violence against her was violence against him. Chen apologized profusely in multiple languages, and the dinner continued with strained civility. But Amara noticed how Jae-hyun's hand stayed at the small of her back for the rest of the evening, proprietary but also protective. Later, after the guests had left, Jae-hyun found her on her terrace. "You didn't have to defend me," Amara said. "I know I'm just property." "Is that what you think?" He stepped closer. "Amara, you stopped being just property the moment you refused to turn around that first day. You stopped being an object when you made me laugh by calling my business associates dramatic boys with expensive toys. You became something else entirely when you sat with me at 3 in the morning and listened to me talk about my dead mother without judgment or pity." "Then what am I?" she whispered. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones with unexpected gentleness. "You're becoming everything I didn't know I needed. And that terrifies me more than any enemy ever has." When he kissed her, it wasn't the forceful taking she'd feared for months. It was questioning, almost hesitant, giving her every opportunity to pull away. Instead, Amara found herself leaning into it, her hands coming up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer. This was wrong. He'd bought her, kidnapped her, held her prisoner. She should hate him, should fight him, should want nothing more than to escape. But somewhere in the late-night conversations and shooting lessons, somewhere between his rare smiles and his unexpected vulnerabilities, something had shifted. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Jae-hyun rested his forehead against hers. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. "Tell me you don't want this, and I'll walk away. I'll never touch you again." Amara thought about all the reasons she should say no. Thought about her father, her old life, her dignity and self-respect. But she also thought about how she felt most alive during these months in a silk cage, how this dangerous man had drawn something fierce and powerful out of her that she hadn't known existed. "I don't want you to stop," she said. "God help me, I don't want you to stop." He swept her into his arms and carried her inside, and for the first time, she went to his bed willingly, her choice, her desire. And when he made love to her, it was with a tenderness that contradicted everything she'd thought she knew about Kim Jae-hyun. Their relationship shifted after that night, becoming something neither of them had names for. Amara was no longer a prisoner but not quite free. She was Jae-hyun's lover, his confidant, the person he reached for in the darkness when nightmares of his father's death haunted him. But the outside world didn't stop because two people found something unexpected in each other. Rival organizations noticed Jae-hyun's new vulnerability. The woman he kept close, the one he protected so fiercely, she was a target. The attack came on a rainy Tuesday. Amara was in the garden with Mrs. Park, learning about the Korean medicinal herbs the older woman grew, when shots rang out. Mrs. Park shoved Amara behind a stone wall, covering her body with her own, as bullets tore through the garden. Security responded quickly, and the attackers were driven off, but Mrs. Park had been hit. She died in Amara's arms, blood staining the soil between her beloved plants, her last words an apology for not protecting Amara better. Jae-hyun found them there, Amara covered in Mrs. Park's blood, sobbing over the body of the woman who had been the only kindness in this strange new world. He didn't say anything, just pulled Amara into his arms and held her while she fell apart. Later, after Mrs. Park's body had been taken away and Amara had showered the blood from her skin, Jae-hyun came to her room. His face was a mask of cold fury. "I'm sending you away," he said. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't find you." "No. Amara, they tried to kill you today. Mrs. Park died protecting you. I won't lose you too." "Then don't," she said fiercely. "Stop treating me like I'm fragile. Stop acting like I can't handle this world. You taught me to shoot, remember? You taught me to fight. So let me stand beside you instead of hiding me away like some delicate flower. You could die. I almost died today anyway. At least if I'm with you, I'm choosing this life instead of just surviving it." She crossed the room to him, taking his hands in hers. "I'm not leaving you, Jae-hyun. Not for safety, not for anything. You're stuck with me." He pulled her close, burying his face in her neck, and she felt his shoulders shake with suppressed emotion. "I love you," he whispered against her skin. "God damn me, I love you, Amara Hayes. And I don't know how to keep you safe." "Then we'll figure it out together," she replied, her own tears falling freely now. "Because I love you too, you impossible, infuriating man." The war that followed was brutal and swift. Jae-hyun's response to the attack was overwhelming, surgical, and terrifying. He dismantled the rival organization piece by piece, and Amara watched him become the cold, ruthless leader she'd first met. Except now she knew the man behind the mask, knew that he hated what he had to do even as he did it with grim efficiency. She also became someone new, not the scared girl who'd been dragged here to pay her father's debt, but a woman who could stand in a room full of dangerous men and be respected, even feared. Jae-hyun taught her the business, let her sit in on meetings, valued her insights. She had a mind for numbers and patterns, and she could read people in ways his male subordinates sometimes missed. One afternoon, Jae-hyun called her into his office with unusual formality. Her father was there, looking older and more worn than she remembered. "Daddy," she breathed, the words slipping out before she could stop it. Marcus Hayes looked at his daughter, at her expensive clothes, her confident posture, the way she stood close to Kim Jae without fear, and his face crumpled. "Baby girl, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did to you." "Your father's debt is paid," Jae said quietly. "He's been working, every cent of his salary going to repay what he owed. He's been sober for 4 months. I wanted you to know that you're free to go, if you choose." Amara looked at her father, saw the hope and fear warring in his eyes. Then she looked at Jae-hyun, at this complicated, dangerous man who'd stolen her freedom and somehow given her a bigger life than she'd ever imagined. "Daddy," she said gently, "I love you. I forgive you. But I'm not coming home. But he kidnapped you, he forced you. He did. Amara agreed. And that was wrong. But something happened here, something neither of us expected. I'm not his prisoner anymore. I'm his partner. I'm choosing this life, choosing him. Marcus looked between them, trying to understand. But how can you love the man who? Because people aren't just one thing, Amara said, echoing her mother's words. Because he's terrible and wonderful, violent and gentle, and somehow exactly what I need. I know it doesn't make sense, Daddy. But it's the truth. They talked for an hour, and while Marcus would never fully understand, he could see that his daughter was happy, was powerful in ways she'd never been in their small apartment. Before he left, he hugged her tight. Your mama would be proud of you, he whispered. Not the circumstances, but the woman you've become. You've got that steel spine she talked about. After he left, Amara turned to Hyun. Thank you for bringing him here. For paying his debt even though you didn't have to. You love him, Hyun said simply. His suffering causes you pain. I would do anything to prevent your pain, including show mercy to a man I have no reason to forgive. I have something for you, she said, pulling a small box from her pocket. I had it made specially. Inside was a simple silver band, engraved with Korean characters. Hyun picked it up, reading the inscription with wonder. Even in darkness, we find light, he translated. Amara. Marry me, she said. Not because of debt or obligation, but because I choose you. Because I want to build a life with you, as complicated and dangerous as that life might be. He laughed, the sound full of joy and disbelief. I'm supposed to be the one asking you. Well, you were taking too long. She grinned. So what do you say, Kim Jae? Want to marry a poor black girl from the wrong side of town? He pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. More than anything in this world. They married 3 months later in a ceremony that blended their cultures and backgrounds. Amara wore a traditional white wedding gown with African Kent cloth accents, her hair in an elaborate updo of cornrows and curls. Hyun wore a traditional Korean hanbok for the first ceremony, then a Western suit for the second. Marcus walked Amara down the aisle, tears streaming down his face. The guests were a strange mix of dangerous men in expensive suits, Amara's old friends from the diner and youth center, and Jaehyun's few remaining family members. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, there was a moment of tense silence. Everyone present knew the complicated history of this union. But no one spoke. Love, they all understood, was rarely simple or pure. Sometimes it grew in the darkest places, fed by tears and pain, until it became something strong enough to bear any weight. I, Amara Hayes, she said during her vows, her voice steady and sure, never imagined I could love someone like you. You're everything I should run from and everything I can't live without. You've shown me strength I didn't know I had, and you've given me a life I never dared to dream of. I promise to stand beside you, in darkness and light, in peace and war, until my last breath. Jaehyun's voice was thick with emotion when he spoke. I, Kim Jae, stole you from your life, thinking I was buying an object. Instead, I found my soul. You've taught me that even men like me can be worthy of love, that redemption is possible even for hands stained with blood. You are my conscience, my courage, and my reason for wanting to be better. I promise to protect you, to treasure you, and to love you with every broken piece of who I am. When they kissed, sealing their vows, the applause was thunderous. And in that moment, surrounded by impossible friends and former enemies, Amara felt the last chains fall away. She was no longer anyone's debt or possession. She was Kim Amara, wife to a dangerous man, a woman who had found her power in the last place she'd expected to find it. The child's laughter echoed through the garden where Mrs. Park's herbs still grew, tended now by Amara's careful hands. Little Minjun, named for Jaehyun's mother and carrying his mother's dark skin and his father's sharp eyes, chased butterflies between the plants with the fearless joy of a 3-year-old who knew he was loved beyond measure. Amara watched her son play, one hand resting on her swollen belly where his sister grew. She'd finished her degree, Jaehyun had insisted, had hired tutors and rearranged his schedule so she could attend classes. Now she ran the legitimate side of their business empire, a string of nightclubs and restaurants that were clean and legal, her business acumen finally given room to shine. Jaehyun had changed too, slowly moving the family away from its darkest enterprises. It was dangerous work, making enemies of former allies, but he did it because Amara had asked him to, because he wanted his children to inherit something better than blood money and fear. Arms wrapped around her from behind, and Jaehyun's chin rested on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? He murmured. About that first night, when I hated you so much I could barely breathe. When I thought my life was ending. And now I think that sometimes life has to break us completely before we can become who we're meant to be. She turned in his arms to face him. I wouldn't change it, you know. Even knowing all the pain, all the complicated messy parts, I wouldn't change a single moment. Not even the beginning? He asked. Not even the debt and the fear? Especially not those parts. They made us who we are. They brought us here. She kissed him softly. We're not a fairy tale, Jae-hyun. We're something better, we're real. Min-jun ran up then, demanding his father lift him high so he could see over the wall. Jae-hyun swept his son into the air, the cold mask he showed the world completely absent, replaced by the warm smile he reserved only for his family. Watching them, Amara thought about all the impossible turns her life had taken. She'd been stolen, imprisoned, and broken. And from those pieces, she'd built something extraordinary. A love that shouldn't exist, a family born from debt and darkness, a life that was dangerous and beautiful and entirely her own. She'd found her steel spine in a silk cage, and she'd used it to forge a freedom that was more precious than any she could have had in her old life. She was no longer that scared girl in a cracked apartment. She was a woman who'd survived the impossible and come out stronger for it. And every day, she chose this life again. Every day, she chose love. Even the kind that grew in darkness, fed by tears, and bloomed despite, or perhaps because of, all the reasons it shouldn't exist. If you enjoyed this story, loves, please like and subscribe. Help our channel grow so we can put out more fascinating stories every week. Thank you for watching.